Okay, well, welcome to part 4, the walk around video on my Jeep Lazy Boy, my old beater. And I'm gonna apologize here, they're doing some construction here next door, so they're building a house, so it's a little noisy, but it's as good as it gets for now. I guess the biggest thing I've done, or the most noticeable thing, is the change in tires. I had 36-inch IROCs, awesome tire. Now on 37-inch Milestar Patagonias. Biggest reason was my steering just couldn't keep up with the wide tires. With the IROCs, I was 3 inches out further, and that extra leverage on the steering and the added scrub radius was just not enough for the stock steering in the WJ. The tie rods were flexing, just the power steering was overheating, just couldn't turn them, couldn't steer them. They weren't that great on the road either, kind of a minor thing, but it's still this package overall, switching to the aluminum 17x8 Pro Comp aluminum wheels with the Milestars, I dropped 18 to 19 pounds a corner off each tire, and the drivability factor on this thing's huge. And the little gain in certain snow conditions from the IROCs doesn't warrant the beating that this thing was taking trying to turn those IROCs versus these. I've got way more power on the highway. My fuel economy on these tires is up like 20% or so. It's quite a bit. It's pretty substantial. I've been happy with the Milestars. They're tough, they're light, they flex really good. They seem to get enough down. They get longer, not wider when you air them down. I beat on them like 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, and so they're squished right out. They work pretty good. They're, like I said, they're light. I can turn them on my 373 gearing. No problems at all. They're so much better. The other big update I did in the rear, coming around here, is that is not a Dana 35. I finally blew up the spider gears in it. So when I swapped it, what I did do is, you can sort of see some of the bracket up top there and the control arm. I pushed the rear axle back 3/4 of an inch, which kept my drive shaft the same without touching my drive shaft. Basically what I did here on the link bars, I kept the geometry all the same. I'm using a 3/4 Heim up here, which is about the right height for the stock mounting location. I had to put one washer in, and I put a 3/4 to 1/2 inch bushing inside it, so I'm using the stock bolt, stock mount up. I tried to keep the geometry the same. I liked the way the Jeep drove. I just didn't like the A-arm itself. It was weak. The bushings up on the frame side took a beating. They didn't work very good. The ball joint up on this side that was there didn't work very good. It just really limited my articulation. I couldn't get enough droop out of it, especially with me sitting as low as I can, or as I am. I can't pick it up. I can't pick up my travel on the droop because the ball joint would bind up. So what I'm using here for arms is I actually used my Rough Country, my original arms that come with my lift kit for the front, and I cut the one end off and had the just welded in the bushing in the end of it there for the rod end, and they were actually the right size tubing and the right length, which is kind of why you can see a little bend in it, is because they were actually for the front, but it doesn't matter here the way it's set up in the rear. So I've got 3/4 of an inch stretch right now. Ideally I would have gone 1.5 inches, but even adding that 3/4 of an inch of wheelbase gained me 1 inch of up travel, because I am not, it gets me right in here was my tight point where I was rubbing before. So I had to limit my travel because I was hitting pretty hard here. Now I can go 1 inch further before I hit. That's still my tight spot. But I think if I could go back another 3/4 of an inch, I could actually clear out a 38 on here pretty easy on the rear anyway. So up front, the 37s, they're actually a little taller than the IROCs, which the IROCs are pretty tall for a 36. They're close to most 37s, but I'm a little tight up front here. I got a little bit of work to maybe do to get clearanced. But I added some more bump stop, a little bit more bump stop, so I'm actually hitting my bump stops properly on the front. I don't have a whole bunch of up travel. I've got, I don't know, a couple inches, 2.5 inches, something like that, before I start with my bump stop. So total, I got about 3 inches up travel right to the full crunch. and it's not a lot, but it's pretty much stock levels. For me, keeping it low and on a budget was kind of my main concern. It still twists pretty well, so it's got the flex that I need and it gets the traction that I need, so that's kind of the important part. I don't want to spend a whole bunch on this thing. It's kind of a garbage can on wheels, and it just gets me out and I beat on it, and I've been learning lots from it, and I think this is pretty much done. I don't think it's ever going to see much more than where it's at. It might get better. Well, it's going to get better shocks up front. The rough country shocks are done. Actually, the 4-link in the rear completely changed the way this thing drove. It drives actually really, really good now. It's amazing just the difference in the rear suspension. Just tightening it all up. The rear end doesn't move around like it used to at all. So it's actually worked out pretty good for short arm. I know there's better ways of doing it. The full long arm and all the stuff would be nice on it, and some beefier axles and the whole 9 yards. It would go a long ways, but for what I got into it, I'm not into it for very much, and it does quite a bit. So yeah, that's kind of where it's sitting. It's not pretty. It's not getting any prettier, but still getting out, and she's ready to go for this winter.